Yes,
Okay.
very much so. Very much so. Interesting, because the Quran, unlike the Bible, is enmeshed into the law of many Muslim countries, and they understand the energetic, not just the physical, and they believe that all evil is created by the jinn, the demon race. So when they see a UFO, they will just say that's a jinn.
Ah,
So
that
it
makes
is the
sense.
human perception of
Right.
that is a jinn. Well, you see that sometimes now, because with researchers have a heck of a job to decide whether a person is reporting a shadow being or a jinn. So that's if you are mindset is, well, everything is a jinn or everything is this, then everything you see is that. I mean, the Iranian Air Force has intercepted countless UFOs, but the public, who are very, very strong in their Islamic law, wouldn't begin to discuss a UFO. To them it would be a demon in the sky.
Right.
But the Iranian military would know it's a UFO. So it's just the way it's handled. I know when David Icke started talking about this, he lost an awful lot of people, because that was the point that a lot of people lost it and couldn't cope with it. And very, very difficult for someone to come to terms with. I personally have seen people change, and it seems perfectly normal to me. I think when I did my television documentary, I did mention that I was in a car with a young woman, and we were both taken. But what I didn't mention, because the documentary wasn't to be trusted, people I weren't to be trusted, but I can talk to Avalonians. When we returned back in the car, there was a great deal of missing time, and at that moment I didn't remember what had happened. It did take me a few hours to get back. The young woman with me didn't remember. Now, she had a complete reptilian soul, and in height she was 5 foot, about 5'5", 5'5.5". And when we got back, and she was absolutely drenched in sweat, and she came up to give me a hug because she was scared, and where her head should have come up to here, her head was up here. And the first thing I did was look down to say, have you still got your shoes on? And she'd taken her shoes off, and I had taken my shoes off. And so what we did from that point on, we put a chart up against the wall, and every sort of 4 or 5 hours would stand her against it and mark it. I still got the chart, I kept it, and she increased about 3 inches. Now, modern science can't accept that. Modern science could not and would not accept it. The reality is that she had genetics in her body, and her body was attempting to return to its normal size, which would have been, God knows, 8, 9, 10 feet, something like that. But in a human body, you restrain, you can't do that. But it had enough genetics in it to allow that to change. And I personally witnessed over a 1 week period 2 spikes where she put on 2.5 inches and then went back down to normal, and then again, which meant 2 abductions, 2 takes in a 1 week period. And she was the one that said to me quite clearly, her brothers, she's seen her brother's back completely morph into scales. I fully accept it, and I have no problem with it. It's exactly what I would expect, because how can you dominate a population unless you look like them? You have to look like them, because they won't accept you otherwise. Well, they would in the old days, because they would be your gods.
Yeah.
So that's absolutely fine. But humanity has moved on now. It can't accept that. But it can accept to be told what to do by people that look like them. Well, it's by far humans, actually. They're not off-world, they're on-world. Many years ago, when the reptilian race reasserted itself and said to what would become the ruling elite, we'll do a deal with you. This is the magic that we'll give you, and this is the power we'll give you. But in return for that, this is what we want. They sort of led the agenda, and it's the last 10-15 years the human elite have begun to split from their so-called overlords, and this is what's led to a lot of infighting. I would put my hand on my heart and say to you, it's Draco reptilians, but it's majoritively now a satanic group of the Illuminati, who are hell-bent on holding the planet in a way that gives them absolute superior power. Two major groups. One group which still sees these creatures as their saviour or their get-out-of-jail-free card.
Right.
Another group which feels that they've reneged on their deals to present the New World Order, because they should have had the New World Order by now. They should have been well and truly on their way. It's been held up, it's been stopped, and so that group is saying that they want to go on their own. So they are fighting within themselves. But the group that is beholden to their masters, very much enthralled to them. You must understand that when the deal is made with these individuals, they're given true magic. I don't mean pulling a white rabbit out of a magician's hat. I mean the ability to conjure forth a jinn, the ability to be in a room of people and to manifest a butterfly, and for people to actually physically see a butterfly flying around the room and attempt to catch the butterfly and take it outside. That's a form of magic, a form of mind control that these people have been given the art of, and they don't want to lose that. They don't want to lose that skill, whereas other groups of humans want the more physical control, which is the physical control of humanity. And so they're not so into that, they're into the military side of it. So you have a very interesting, well, I think it's interesting, division between the elite now. Well, both, because the ships are interdimensional. The ships will go from the fourth dimension and arrive in the third and solidify into the third. Although a lot of the energetic bodies, the majority of those creatures will remain in an energetic form, in a protected environment, and only some will come through, but they require a huge amount of energy to maintain their physical form. And those creatures would have arrived by ship when they created their base here. They created a safe haven for themselves under the ground, where it was like their own home that was built. It was on a very impoverished scale, but it meant they didn't have to go back for regular topping up, for want of a better word. So they had their own world. The reason they chose to be underground was because the humans had moved on and wouldn't accept them in their true form. Therefore they had to remain underground, but they had to connect with the elite governments of the world so that they controlled through proxies, basically, which is what several people in government are. Many of the grey races are, I mean, I've made it public, I don't like the greys, I really don't have time for them. However, there's a lot of humanity in some of them, and many of them are victims. They are trapped themselves, and they'll consistently attempt to undermine what I would call the program. So that's why abductees sometimes report not returning to their bed, or returning with their clothes on back to front, or returning into the front garden, or returning somewhere else. That's not through a mistake. People don't understand. They think that's a mistake. It's not a mistake. It's the Greys deliberately sabotaging the program, because they are manipulated by the reptilians and it's their way of fighting back. I personally witnessed that, and I made that clear in a video some 4 years ago, I think 3 years ago, where I saw a group of humans sitting in a facility underground, and a small grey, 1 metre tall, standing by the side of them, and the grey not taking responsibility for the humans, and attempting to argue. And so often the case will be that somebody, I'll say somebody, a grey, can get away with something that appears to be against the instructions of their masters, simply because they are being allowed to get away with it at a local level. It doesn't stop a very grand plan. In fact, I've talked about the Roswell event, and I've made it clear, in my view, the Roswell event was a planned event to seed technology onto the Earth. You see, the thing is that technically no alien race may give a present to a inferior race. And when I say inferior, I don't mean spiritually, I mean technologically. So if you go back to Earth history, the white man would arrive on some foreign island and he would give a load of glass beads to the native chief, and the native chief would give him half of his village. That's not allowed.
Right.
So in order to offer those presents, you have to create a situation where in law you can say, well, I didn't give it to them, it crashed and they took it and they did with it what they would. So to me, for those who know their history, Roswell was a real event, and it was a Trojan horse. And I'll just finish off and explain why it's a Trojan horse. Prior to Roswell, if I'm an off-worlder and I want to know what's going on, I've got two possibilities. I can either get into your mind, or I physically have to have an agent break into the FBI or the CIA, go through old-fashioned filing cabinets, just like you do in the old spy days, and get those hard copies. As soon as we became digitalized, they can sit thousands of miles off the Earth and just access that information. So it has, yes, it's advanced humanity, but it has advanced their information gathering tenfold. Any race that willingly or foolishly gives up its sovereignty has a lot to answer for. Any race that sells itself because something is offered to it and doesn't have the ability to connect with its higher self and ask, am I being offered something that is good for me? To be offered eternal life, to be offered a body that never breaks down, to be offered wonderful technology, if only you do this. So anything that's got that in its history, I would have a real problem with.
And the Zetas do?
They do have that.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, first of all, let me say that I have the highest regard, he's passed on now, but for Zachariah Stitchin. I think he was an excellent academic, and he did genuinely interpret the tablets correctly.
Right.
What I'm suggesting is that the tablets were planted, and the information on those tablets, or some of those tablets, was actually inaccurate. The long-term plan for those who would rule us would be for us to accept any particular type of alien as our creators. And because if you look on an alien force as a god force, you are then very, very, very beholden to that creature, and you feel that you are inferior to that creature. And so I was trying to alert people to the fact that this material found in, I don't know which level of the mound that they were found in, is actually inaccurate and has been planted to make people think that the Anunnaki created humanity. What I've always said is that what they did was alter us. Humanity was already existent upon the Earth, but it was altered The people generally think of the Pleiadians as the good guys, and the reptilians as the bad guys. I think what I would say is that the Pleiadians are particularly warlike. They are far more benevolent to humanity. Pleiadians dislike the fact that humans have been manipulated, that humans don't have the full information at their fingertips to make the choice. So the Pleiadians are a race of people who have off and on fought reptilian groups and have aligned themselves with other alien forces who are against the reptile forces, and the Pleiadians have for some considerable time played a beneficial effect upon humanity on Earth. Taking out the evolutionary side of it, because obviously people in a hot country have the pigmentation of the skin black. In terms of genetics and alien mixing, the sad thing is that racism springs from the reptilians. That's exactly like so many things done, being territorial, wanting wars, being greedy, arrogant. That all comes from values that the reptilians have given humanity. And white was always seen as the superior colour. So the Lord Reptile was white. All the ruling elite reptilians of that particular group, the Draco group, are white. Almost albino because they have red eyes. So therefore white became the ruling colour, and in ceremonies the non-white reptiles will wear white sashes across their bodies. Sometimes they are just one sash, sometimes there's a cross sash. Therefore they were always going to work with the white races because that was the way they had it, and because they felt that way when they were putting the control implants, and I don't mean a physical implant, into humans' minds. They did not work with the black races, they worked with the white races, with the result now that it is very hard for a reptilian or what have you to take control or mind control a black person, because they do not have the access codes to a black person in the same way they have to a Caucasian, simply because when they were doing their dumbing down and their altering of the human mind, they left the black races alone. However, they did make contact with a number of black races, and one of them is the Zulu tribe. They met with the Zulu tribe and imparted the warlike strength to them, and that is why the Zulus were absolutely unbeatable for their own time, and that's why they gave the whites such a hard battle, because they had the values given to them from their chiefs who had been in contact. But when they made contact with them, they didn't do it in the same way they did with the white people. They wanted them to be a powerful race. And then you've got people who are mixtures, such as in South America. Again, they would be seen as a white race. I'm very concerned with any organisations that almost create a guru or a godlike stance. I would counsel people to totally ignore anything coming from that particular mouthpiece. You see, I never believed all this New Age rubbish. I mean, there was a lot of New Age rubbish that was put out, and some of it was very well meant, and some of it was actually designed to skew the argument. It definitely peaked 2 to 3 days either side of that critical date, and I went on Avalon and I talked about the CERN, the Hadron Collider, and how that didn't work. So it's a long drawn out end game, but the bad guys have the ability to hurt and cause an awful lot of pain. The question is, how much will they be allowed to make? An attempt by the Americans to form a one world government, the attempt by the Americans to have martial law, the attempt to try to either chip people or massively kill people. It's got to be played out very quickly. I also expect, if that doesn't work directly, a false alien invasion or a false epidemic. So I think all the big things have got to be played, because 2016 is the final chance they have. They'll get no more resources coming through, and if they're on this earth, they're trapped on this earth. They have to create their life for themselves. So between now and 2016, I'm surprised Obama hasn't done more.